All right, guys, welcome into week 2 of AL.com recruiting. We're excited to bring you an incredible prospect, a guy who is a fan favorite among many of the folks here and throughout the entire state in the Birmingham area, especially. Joining me today is Ben Thomas, high school sports reporter for AL.com. Behind the scenes, we're going to have Patrick Greenfield. He is our producer. We'll talk to him throughout the entire show. He'll bring up our graphics, our video. He really is the man with the plan, the brains behind the entire operation. But Ben, super excited to talk about this prospect today, Tanner Bailey. And again, we're broadcasting here on the Alabama and the Auburn page because this guy has a very unique perspective on this state because of the ties to both schools, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, right now he's not committed to go to either school, so which is unusual. But yeah, I don't know that I've ever dealt with something like this. But Tanner Bailey, his granddad was in Bear Bryant's first recruiting class. Ken Bailey was his name, and then Lance Bailey, his father, played quarterback at Auburn. So he's basically a dual legacy to Auburn and Alabama. But you know, a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago now, he came out and committed to Oregon, which I don't have my mileage calculator up here, Simone, but that's pretty far from Gordo, Alabama. So I was surprised. I don't know, maybe everybody else had better intel, but I was surprised to see him get out of state. And of course, you know, he's a senior, so he's going into his senior year. Anything can happen, as we all know. Nothing's final until you sign on that dotted line. But this guy seems like he's good to go. He likes Oregon and likes what they have to offer.
Yeah, for sure. And I talked to Tanner a lot about what went into his decision, why Alabama and Auburn really wasn't the best fit for him. And he had a very interesting perspective on why he chose to go the Oregon route. But you can tell that he was very thoughtful in that decision making. But in his high school career, Ben, so far, Tanner has really, really put Gordo on the map the last few years.
Yeah, he really was. You know, actually last year he broke his collarbone and missed 5 games with a broken collarbone, but he came back, got Gordo all the way to the championship game where they lost to Hanley. You may remember that Hanley team with Dylan Brooks. His recruitment has been well chronicled, committed to Tennessee, signed with Tennessee, requested his release, and now is at Auburn. But anyway, you know, like you see his stats, 2,444 yards, 32 touchdowns, 60% completion in just 10 games, Simone, because he missed 5 with that broken collarbone. So really talented prospect, dual sport athlete, also playing baseball for the Green Wave.
So I went one-on-one with Tanner to discuss his decision to commit to Oregon. Here's what he had to say.
It was for sure a relief to get that out of the way. I was really patient with my recruiting process. But I feel like I made the right decision. And like I said, I was really patient. So I took an unofficial up there about about 2 weeks ago. And then I gave it about 48 hours, you know, just kind of let it sink in. Didn't want to make to everybody, didn't want to make a decision off an emotional high. But like I said to some other people too, I'm still on kind of that emotional high. So that's kind of when I knew I made the right decision was I kind of felt at peace about it, you know, after praying about it and talk with my family about it and everything. So it's been a lot less stressful, but I've had a lot of fun with it.
Tanner, you've had offers from Alabama and Auburn. You're an in-state guy, and you have roots at both Tide and Tigers program. What ultimately kind of led to your decision against to not choose either the Alabama or the Auburn program? Ultimately, why was it Oregon and not Alabama or Auburn?
I think it was just a fit. I think that was what I was looking for at first. And I told, you know, every coach that called me first was I wanted to look for a fit. And so, you know, obviously, you know, being an in-state guy, it is, you know, tough, you know, growing up in the SEC and you know, all you know is, you know, playing ball in the South. But you know, at some point you have to look at it from a business decision. And I felt like Oregon, you know, for me was the best fit. And the relationship with the coaching staff. I mean, we're pretty much like that nowadays. You know, I text them, you know, every day. You know, they're checking up with me. I play baseball as well, and so they could probably tell you my stats right now if you asked them. So those are 2 big things when I looked for in a school, and obviously location was not a huge thing. So, but yeah, like I said, I'm really happy with my decision, and I know that you know they're gonna treat me well, and I'm gonna be comfortable up there, and so that's really what I wanted.
What are your goals now moving forward into spring training, into the summer, into your senior season? Now that you kind of have this decision out of the way, what are you hoping to accomplish now with about a year left of your high school career?
For sure, win a state championship. I know. Gordo and Alabama's. It's more of a powerhouse for football, and so I've won one in baseball. I got to do that. I played baseball. I started in the varsity team.
So obviously, his big decision for Tanner was based around having a relationship with the assistant coaches, and he brought up Joe Moorhead a lot to me, the offensive coordinator over there at Oregon, Ben. And I think that for these guys, some of us maybe scratching our heads and wondering why they make the decisions that they do, but I think it really matters to them is how they can click with certain assistant coaches. And listen, Alabama and Auburn, obviously both great recruiting schools, but ultimately it's a personal decision and a business decision for Tanner.
Yeah, it really is. He told me, after he committed that Mario Cristobal, the head coach at Oregon, was really fired up, that he had gotten a lot of comments from other coaches. I mean, how'd you pull this guy out of Tuscaloosa? Basically, Gordo's in Tuscaloosa, right there at the home of the University of Alabama. And, it's kind of confusing sometimes to see what's a committable offer. I hate that term, but, they throw these offers out and you don't know what you can commit to or what not. But I'll tell you one thing, Simone, just like I said last week, one thing, there's not a lot of positive things about the pandemic, but one positive thing for me is I got to know a lot of these kids, a lot of these young men and talk to them. And this is one of my favorite guys in this recruiting class. He is, I would text him and he said, just give me a call. I'm happy to talk to you. And he always got right back to me. And I think this guy's going to be a good player for Oregon. Interesting, Simone, that this is the second quarterback in 3 years from Alabama to go to Oregon. Hoover's Robbie Ashford. You may remember that name. Another dual sport guy. Baseball player and football players at Oregon right now. So it's getting less and less unusual to see these, faraway states come into Alabama. They know there's great prospects here. It's getting less and less unusual for them to come in and pluck some of these guys. And kids are not afraid to, go to the West Coast or anywhere if they think that's where their best playing time and best fit may be.
Yeah. Two big things that I'm very I'm not only interested, but very impressed is really the word I'm looking for with Tanner is, like you said, his maturity, his ability to just do a fantastic interview, really thought out process for him when committing to Oregon, and also his toughness. He suffered that injury last season, like you talked about earlier, Ben, and comes back in, goes to the state championship game. Of course, they lose, but for him to kind of tough that out and to play, I mean, how fantastic is that from a young man who goes through some difficult things and then comes back and does what he does?
Well, even and in his case, a top recruit, whether he came back or not last year, he was still going to be a top recruit. So he could have said, I think I'm just going to sit the rest of my junior year and get well and come back strong as a senior year. He didn't want to do that. He's a team guy. And like you said, within one win, they came to the state championship, and he had a tough task in that championship game against Hanley, ironically, at Tuscaloosa Bryant-Denny Stadium against Dylan Brooks and those guys. He had a tough task, and this is a guy that Gordo's having a great baseball season. He's they're likely to be number one when the new sports writers poll comes out in the morning. They could be the number one team in Class 4A. So you're looking at a guy who's already won a state baseball title. Will be in contention for another probably this year, and then almost certainly they'll be one of the top-ranked teams in football in the fall.
Yeah, Ben, we actually discussed that as what his goals were going to be his senior year at Gordo. And Patrick, I'm not sure if you had the second part of that interview, but I'd like to hear what he had to say when it comes to his goals going into this final year in Tuscaloosa. What are your goals now moving forward into spring training, into the summer, into your senior season? Now that you kind of have this decision out of the way, what are you hoping to accomplish now with about a year left of your high school career?
For sure, win a state championship. I know. Gordo and Alabama's. It's more of a powerhouse for football, and so I've won one in baseball. I got to do that. I played baseball. I started in the varsity team as a seventh grader, and I DH'd, and I got to experience that championship kind of vibe and that season, and that was really fun. And that was probably some of the best times of my life, is being at such a young age and developing as a kid. I play with some guys that are now my coaches. My quarterback coaches now, or he played on that baseball team that won a state championship. And so it's kind of fun, have those relationships and but for sure win a state championship, just because I wanna like I talk with my family, and my dad's a huge football guy. I want to leave a legend, and so I think to leave at with that kind of name and that trademark, I've got to win one, and so that'd be my biggest thing. And then two would be just to have fun. I know with COVID, it's kind of killed a lot of things, and so I mean I'm just trying to take it day by day, enjoy it, and just get the most of it.
I don't know how you could love a kid more, Ben. I mean, he literally checks every single box. He's humble. He's a leader. He's got all the talent. I was so impressed. You told me I was going to be impressed with this interview with him, and he just kind of blew me away.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. You texted me and said, "I love this kid." I'm like, I told you would. I mean, the guy's unbelievable. You got to like a guy who talks about being a legend in high school. And these multi-sport guys, Simone, that aren't just focused on football yet, that are enjoying, want to have different sports, and I think he's going to be successful. Who knows if his recruiting's over with? I mean, he certainly seems set on Oregon right now, but like I said, he'll probably, most kids sign obviously in the December period now, and until he does that, things are still open. But he certainly seems set on going to Oregon right now.
All right, so Tanner Bailey headed to Oregon, a guy who is an Alabama and an Auburn legacy. We want to pull up kind of the quarterback class that we're going to see here throughout the entire state, Ben. These guys are incredibly talented. So most of them uncommitted, and these are, again, like we discussed, some of the best throughout the entire state. Tanner Bailey going to Oregon, Zach Pyron going to Baylor. But the rest of these guys, I mean, some of the best quarterbacks I've ever seen in the high school level.
Yeah, Zach Pyron's interesting. I mean, this is the guy that transferred from Fife. He won 2 state championships at Fife. If you guys have seen Fife, they run that wing T offense. They don't throw it very much, and all they do is win. I think they won 45 straight games currently. But Zach wins 2 state championships there, decides to go to Pinson Valley, and all he does is lead them to a state championship last year with, of course, Mr. Football, JaQuincy McKinstry, and those guys. And he recently committed to Baylor, so another guy that not really sticking around, not going as far away as Tanner, but not sticking around, going to Baylor. And those are the 2 guys that have committed. And, it's interesting, Simone, because if you looked at last year's quarterback group in Alabama, and particularly down here in Mobile where I live, I was focused on that. We had 2 guys, Riley Leonard, who played at Fairhope, committed to sign with Duke, Trent Battle, who played at Daphne, committed and signed with Texas Christian. So all these, think about that, Simone, all 4 of these guys signed with out-of-state programs, and then throw in Gardendale's Will Goose Crowder, who's going to West Virginia. So 5 top quarterbacks in the last 2 years committed or signed with out-of-state programs.
Yeah, I think a lot of that, Ben, I mean, it's no secret that the competition level at Alabama and at Auburn at the quarterback spot is not easy, and really in the entire SEC. I mean, teams in the SEC are going to get the best quarterbacks in the entire country, not just the best quarterbacks in the state. So a lot of these guys, they want to go get some playing time, and sometimes it takes going to an Oregon, going to a Baylor, going to a TCU to make that happen. And one guy, if I could cross my fingers and hope he would play here in the state, is Thompson quarterback Connor Harrell. That guy is racking up the offers after he was injured in the state title game. Of course, Thompson went on to win that game, which will go down in the history of high school football. But he is a fantastic dual threat guy, really one of the best that I've seen as of late here in the state, Ben.
Yeah, his recruiting has just kind of picked up. It was kind of slow. He wasn't really ranked that high in the recruiting rankings, and all of a sudden, like you said, he's starting to get a bunch of offers, and people are starting to realize the talent he has. It was unfortunate. I think he had a chance to be Mr. Football last year. Had he gotten to play in the second half of that Thompson game, you realize he hurt his collarbone in the first half against Auburn, didn't get to play in the second half. You mentioned that crazy game, how it finished. Thompson still won. But this guy I think he only threw 3 interceptions all year. And this is, so Mark Freeman, obviously known, the Thompson coach, as a kind of a quarterback guru. The last 4 guys he's had have won the Class 7A Back of the Year awards. Obviously, Talia Tagovailoa 2 years, Sawyer Pate the year before last, now at Auburn, and now Connor Harrell. And he looks to make it 5 straight next year, and will be probably going in what is probably the leading contender for Mr. Football, I would think, going into this next fall.
Totally agree. If you bring that list back up there, Patrick, Cade Currith, the quarterback at Hewitt Trussville. This is this is a program year in and year out that is stacked with talent. And when they're good at quarterback, they're tough to stop, especially in 7A Region 3. They're a contender, and that's a tough region.
Talent-laden region. I mean, we could do a show just on that region probably every week, Simone, with all the talent they got there. But yeah, Cade's a good prospect. You know, it's interesting. A lot of these, as I told you, I live on the Gulf Coast, but a lot of these guys are from the Birmingham area where you're currently residing. If you look at Khalib Johnson from Clay Chalkville, uncommitted. He had set his commitment for a couple of weeks ago and then decided to pull back. I think he's got some other offers coming in there. Bennett Meredith is the guy who was at Spain Park last year, now at Hoover. So he continues to be there. And then just looking elsewhere around the state, look at there, Simone, another Nix, Caleb Nix, playing for his dad at Central Phoenix City. Probably yet to see the best from him, but maybe this year is the year for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, next week we are going to dive into some of these Hewitt-Trussville guys. Ben, like we talked about a second ago, that region always stacked with talent. Hewitt-Trussville always getting a ton of guys, especially up front, offensive, defensive line. We're going to break down kind of what Hewitt-Trussville is going to see next season, and hopefully talk to head coach Josh Floyd.
Yeah, you know, what I think is interesting why we wanted to have Josh on was because they have, like we talked about, that region just being talent laden, that 7A Region 3. I mean, it's brutal, Simone. Thompson, Hewitt-Trussville, Hoover, all those teams. So he's got, Coach Floyd has got, we mentioned Cade Caruth. He's not even one of the guys we're getting ready to talk about, but 3 guys in the top 12 prospects. You know, I say top 12, what most people consider the top 12 prospects in the state. You got Justice Finkley, defensive end. He's ranked number 6 right now. You got Riley Quick. Brother of Pierce Quick, by the way, who is at Auburn right now, and Omari Kelly, number 12. He's an athlete, wide receiver type guy. So all those guys on a talent-laden Hewitt-Trussville team. And I might say, you know, Justice Finkley played a little bit of an April Fool's joke on some of us, including me last week, Simone. I don't know if you saw that or not.
I didn't see it.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it. Maybe this is me just not thinking. But on April Fool's Day, he tweeted like in the morning, committing today at 4 p.m. I'm like, what? I had no idea this was going to happen. So I called Coach Floyd, and Coach Floyd said, I don't know what you're talking about. He just set up some official visits. That would shock me. And at that time, I didn't even think about it being April 1st. And so Coach Floyd texted me back and said, not committing today. And I'm like, oh, wait a second. Was this an April Fool's thing? He goes, yeah, I think so. And I'm not thrilled about it. But good kid. I mean, a good kid. Yeah, and he said the coaches, some college coaches like that, but I was like, oh, man.
Mm-hmm. Listen, man, you know what? You got to love it with these kids. They're having fun with it. I mean, what do you expect? High school kids. But, you know, really enjoyed talking Tanner Bailey today, Gordo quarterback, a great young man. He's headed to Oregon. Of course, he has Alabama and Auburn ties. I think you should keep an ear out for what could potentially happen down the road. He still has another year there at Gordo, not only playing football, but playing baseball as well. So for Ben Thomas, we appreciate your time. Of course, as always, Patrick Greenfield behind the scenes. Next week, we are going to chat Hewitt-Trussville, 3 of the top players in the state. We're going to talk to head coach of the Huskies, Josh Floyd. That's next week, Wednesday at 12:30. Be sure to tune in to episode 3 of AL.com Recruiting.